Welcome to Vintgar Gorge. This is a great photography location just a little bit to the north of Bled Lake in Slovenia. It's a great place to photograph running water, rapids and a waterfall. In this small gorge here, as you've just seen, the river that we've just looked at is the Radovna River. And here the Radovna River has carved a small gorge about 1.5 kilometers long. It's a popular place, as you can see, very touristy. It's August now, so it's the busiest time. But it really is a great place to visit. Now, as you can see above, it's cloudy. Cloudy days are the best times for photographing running water, rapids and waterfalls especially, because the rapids are very white and the waterfall is very white. So if there's direct light falling on the white parts, then they're going to be overexposed, way blown out. If you try to expose for the white parts, then the scenery around is going to be too dark. So it's an extremely high dynamic range. So as you can see here in this picture, the direct light that's falling on the water has resulted in the white parts of the water being way overexposed. The water itself is extremely bright, but the surrounding rocks are extremely dark, and that's because of the direct light effect on water. The dynamic range of this scene is way too big for the camera to handle, and this is the result. The other problem that you get when shooting on sunny days is this. Parts of your scene are going to be in the shadow. So as you can see by this picture here, half of the waterline is in the shadow and half is in direct light. So you get all sorts of problems with harsh shadows and harsh light like this. Okay, so I'm going to take you into the gorge now, show you a little bit of the gorge, and then we're going to do some nice long exposure photography. As I said, it's cloudy today, so it's a great time to photograph the place. The light's going to be low, so it's a good opportunity for getting some slow shutter speeds for some long exposures. So let's go. So, I found an interesting spot. I know a lot of places along this gorge that I photographed, but today I found something a little bit different, as you can see. I'm set up here, and I've found this section where this tree has fallen into the river just by one of the rapids. So, it's quite an interesting little shot. I framed it up here, as you can see. Now, because we've got an overcast day, there's not so much light, so you can see that the scene is evenly lit, and that's the great thing about overcast days when shooting waterfalls and rapids, because if the sun was shining right on this white water would be far too bright, especially in comparison to the rest of the scene. So the scene is evenly lit. Now, it also means, because the light is low, that I can get a slower shutter speed. Now I put a polarizer on to control the reflections, and that polarizer has also given me an extra about a stop, about 1 to 2 stops I think, stopped it down. So I've got an even slower exposure. Now, because the water's running so fast, I don't need a super slow shutter speed. And the shutter speed that I have is fast enough. So, let's see. So you can see on the back of the camera I've framed up my composition, and I'm getting 0.6 of a second at f16, ramped it down to ISO 100. So let's take the shot. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so now I've changed my composition, and I was going to go zoom in right at the back there, but actually when I started moving things around, I found that there's a much nicer composition which included some of this tree and the foreground and the rapids at the back, and also some of the distant greenery there. Now again, because it's overcast, it means that the whole scene is evenly lit. Often when it's not overcast, the background there and the higher bits can be very, very bright, and they can end up being blown out, so you get problems with dynamic range. So today is a perfect day for it. So I found this composition, if you can see it there. But now, there we go. I'll take the shot. Now I framed in some of the edge work here, and now with this composition I've actually got a 1 second exposure. So let's take this shot, see how it goes. 1 second. Beautiful. That's beautiful. The greens at the back are really nice and soft. They're not too bright, they're not overexposed, and the water itself is exposed perfectly. So there you go. There's a great example of shooting rapids in Vintgar Gorge. Now let's see if we can go check out some other places. Now there's some really great viewpoints from the boardwalks and the edges, but unfortunately this time of year in August it's far too busy, so you really can't set up your tripod. So it's better to come, I'd say, early in the season, around sort of April, May, or maybe late September and October. Of course, if the gorge is still open, then October is a great time to come, because all of these colours start to change and you get these beautiful autumn colours. And if there's been enough rain, then the water level is really high. I'll show you one of the photos I took in autumn on one of my photography workshops. Needless to say, my participants were extremely happy at this time. Okay, so let's go further up the gorge, see if we can find another place. Moved just a little bit further up, found another very interesting scene down here. As you can see here, it's really nice actually how the water is running down between these little rocks, and there's some nice mossy rocks there, some wet ones just above. You've got some green ones that are a bit dry, and then as we look further down here we've got some more green rocks. So I actually found Found myself a nice composition. If you can see it on the back there. Where I've got just the water on the left side rolling in here and then curling around to the left side of the composition, and then running out down to the bottom right side of the composition. I don't think this is a really nice shot. I've got a lovely mix of browns and greens here. I've set the white balance to cloudy to emphasize those brown colors, and dialed my exposure compensation down to about minus 2/3, just to preserve those highlights, just to make sure that I don't burn out the white bits there. So let's take the shot and see how it looks, shall we? I've got some people over there in my shot. Yep, their legs are just in the edge of my composition, so unfortunately I'm going to have to wait. So it looks like the people aren't going to move, so I can't expect them to, you know. They've as much right to be here as I do, so I've adapted, and I've just moved my composition slightly around to the left. It's no biggie, actually. I think it's a little bit better. So let's go, let's take the shot. Now I've dialed it down to exposure compensation of -1. I've got 1 second now to really preserve those highlights. There we go. That's lovely. Now I'll just take one more. Just take that exposure compensation down to about -2/3. Just take another shot like that. That way I got the best of both worlds, just in case.